Amidst a string of mixed results, whilst Callum McFarlane is at the wheel in charge of Chelsea, we are still hunting down for our new manager. And while I expect more names to come out of the woodworks when the season ends, at the moment there are 3 managers being talked about primarily in Xabi Alonso, Andoni Iraola and Fulham's Marco Silva. So today we're going to take a little look at all 3 of these managers. We're going to compare their stats in a lovely brand new table I've made, and we're going to see what we think. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And I'm back. I've had a few days off. It's been mental, wild. I've been super busy, but forget about that. Let's talk about the football. Marco Silva is a name that's not going away. It keeps being mentioned, and we keep seeing things like, Chelsea are, still very interested in Marco Silva. Andoni Iraola has been kind of the biggest name that's being talked about since the whole manager thing started. And Xabi Alonso is still being thrown around, although there does seem to be a little bit more news saying he will only be interested if afforded more sporting control. So we've looked at a couple of these guys before, but we haven't compared them all together. So let's get straight into the table. This is my brand new Manager League stats comparison table, and we are looking at Marco Silva's season at Fulham this year, Andoni Iraola's season at Bournemouth this year, but we are still going back to Xabi Alonso's invincible season at Bayer Leverkusen in the 23-24 season in the Bundesliga. So starting off league context, Marco Silva at Fulham this year in the Premier League. He is 11th as of right now, and there are not many points between 6th and 14th. So that might not, it sounds a little bit more underwhelming than it actually is, because in the grand scheme of things, one win can really change the complexity of how the table is looking at the moment. But at the end of the day, as of right now, that is kind of what you expect from Fulham. They have not really been doing much in the way of punching for Europe or honours or getting far in cup competitions over the last few seasons, albeit Marco Silva has done a really good job to keep them stable. Andoni Iraola, as of right now, is 6th in the Premier League with Bournemouth, and that is really, really impressive. Andoni Iraola has a crazy basketball style of football, but compared to some of the other managers on this list and in the league in general, he consistently gets the heart of his team ripped out. Every single time they've got a good player, they go. It's just kind of what happens. It happened with Dom Solanke. It's just happened with Antoine Semenyo, who obviously went to Man City. But despite that, and also not having any control in the transfer structure at Bournemouth, Andoni Iraola is doing a really good job. And as of right now, Bournemouth 6th in the Premier League. Very impressive. And then, of course, Xabi Alonso was an undefeated Bundesliga champion in the 23-24 season. So it is a little bit disingenuous, because I'm comparing, obviously, the most recent seasons from Marco Silva and Andoni Iraola. But Xabi, he had another season at Leverkusen. I think in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense to me, because we're looking at Marco Silva and Andoni Iraola right now and what they're capable of. But with Xabi Alonso, because he's a winner, we kind of have to look at what that winning team looked like and if it could pertain to our own squad. So we'll move on to the defensive record. Marco Silva this season in the Premier League, 1.28 goals per game conceded, which isn't terrible. It's kind of a mid-table number, as in and around as you would expect with the team that he's got and the resources that he's got. Not a terrible return by any stretch. Andoni Iraola, 1.42 goals per game conceded. So the interesting thing about that, and we'll get a bit more onto it later, is Iraola is conceding more goals per game than Marco Silva is, but he's significantly higher in the table by 5 spots at the moment, which is really impressive. Then we have a little look at Xabi Alonso's title-winning team, and they were only shipping 0.72 goals per game, which is absolutely unbelievable. That's so good. The best I've seen out of all the managers so far was actually Xavi Hernandez at Barcelona with a 0.52. That's wild, absolutely wild. But anything less than 1 goal is getting onto the elite status at the end of the day. So clearly already Xabi Alonso is well out in front. I'm not going to lie to you, spoiler alert, that's a little bit of a theme for out here, but this is just more about trying to figure out who would fit our team. But either way you look at it, with that back 3 and that strong midfield in the Bundesliga, Xabi Alonso has an absolutely elite return in that season with 0.27 goals conceded per game, which is really good. I would not mind a bit of that. Possession, so interesting here, and the margins between Silva and Iraola are actually quite fine. Marco Silva generally tries to play not a possession-based game, but definitely a more controlled game than someone like Andoni Iraola. But he got 51% possession overall in this season, which doesn't scream possession-based football, does it, at the same time? So a bit of a strange one there. Andoni Iraola, with his basketball, get the ball up top as quick as possible and don't necessarily worry about hanging on to it for too long, 49% possession. So already, even with Iraola's decidedly more chaotic brand of football, he's not got much less in the way of possession than Marco Silva does at Fulham at the moment. So I would argue that's actually But just between these two, that's a positive for Andoni Iraola to be able to play a chaotic basketball brand of football and still keep his possession stat there. Xabi Alonso, 59% possession. That is what you're looking at with possession-based teams, right? And it's really interesting. I said it in my last video. Xabi Alonso seems to kind of play the style of football successfully, or he did at least with this Leverkusen team, that Liam Rosenior wanted to play with us, where it is high press, it's controlled. But Xabi Alonso was pulling it off with 59% possession, but he wasn't just farming it out wide, pulling it back like Maresca did. Like, he was also creating attacks and allowing people to be dynamic, so that's very interesting. We move on to the build-up styles. So, Marco Silva, positional and structured. So I've gone through this in one of my last videos before, but what this basically means is, obviously, it's all about positional play. Be here, be here, be here. When this thing happens, be here. But Marco Silva is not much of one to give people dynamic freedom to act in certain situations. Silva seems to be a little bit more like Enzo Maresca was, where he has expectancy of, you need to do this in this position when this thing happens. So there's kind of like a lot of tactical instruction for every single player in each kind of moment, right? So like I say, a bit less in the way of freedom, which will probably be good for people like our defenders and our midfielders, but with some of our more free-flowing attacking players, the likes of João Pedro and Cole Palmer, who benefit with a bit more freedom, maybe that doesn't suit them so well. Andoni Iraola, direct and transitional. Andoni Iraola is like, as soon as we've got the ball, let's go. Do you know what I mean? He obviously, albeit his possession is actually quite reasonable, he's not super concerned with hanging on to the ball as he is. When we've got the ball, let's get it into an attacking position very, very, very quickly. Obviously, we'll get into the high press and stuff, in the next part, but he plays a fast, bombastic brand of football which has a lot of attacking upside and some defensive downsides as well. And then you've got Xabi Alonso with positional, controlled build-up style. Now, the difference between structured and controlled, Xabi Alonso is kind of like Marco Silva and Enzo Maresca in the base foundation of his tactical idea is, okay, when these things happen, I want you to be here, here, and here. But he allows his players more freedom to react dynamically when things happen in the game. So he endeavours to get the best out of his players that do play with freedom. And this is kind of what Liam Rosenior tried to do as well, right? Because we know Liam Rosenior came out in a post-match interview after we conceded like a long throw once and was like, some of the players didn't perform their tactical duties or whatever. I think he said something cringy and Rosenior, like I can't remember exactly what it was. And then we saw Andres Santos get dropped for a long time, so we thought it might have been him. But also we know from when Cole Palmer came out at the start, he said he lets us play with freedom. So this seems to be the kind of thing that Xabi Alonso does, but obviously was better at it. I imagine it's got more to do with being better at the positional side of it, and and knowing when to allow your good attacking creative freedom players to have that freedom. So I do think that's interesting. But yeah, Marco Silva, a bit more of a Maresca type, wants everyone to be somewhere in a certain position. Andoni Iraola is just like, mate, as soon as you got the ball, just get it up there and let's try and make something happen. Xabi Alonso is similar to Marco Silva, where he likes the players to have an idea of what they're going to do in each situation, but he allows them to react dynamically to what's going on around them to get the best out of the creative players that are able to play with freedom. Pressing intensity. So this is where everyone is a little bit different, actually. So Marco Silva, medium press, not particularly fussed with high lines and putting loads of pressure on the opponents to win the ball back and stuff. He's kind of willing to let it come to him. Very, very high press from Andoni Iraola. He is all about pressure. Get the ball back, win the ball back, make something happen, win it back high up the pitch if possible so you can get into attacking situations quicker, which is good, but for our squad in particular is a little bit worrying because we've seen how dangerous we look when we are trying to attempt a high press and we don't necessarily have the players for it yet. And then you've got Xabi Alonso, who does he does a high press, not quite as high and aggressive as Andoni Iraola, but at the same time, because he's also, you can see with the possession, he's quite focused on structured and control of his game. So there's kind of a blend of the two styles there, which is another thing I like about Xabi Alonso in particular. A medium press, I think, would suit our current squad more so than Andoni Iraola's very high press would. And largely that comes down to the goalkeeper as well, I guess. So, interesting one there for sure. So we move on to tempo and we'll talk about passes per game. Marco Silva, 500 passes per game. So that shows that he, kind of like it says here, positional structured. He's not absolutely obsessed with like dominating the ball, but they do like to hold on to the ball and try and craft situations when possible. Obviously, that's difficult when they're playing teams that are, kind of better at the possession game than they are, which is maybe why his possession stat is so low compared to Xabi Alonso, who obviously was really, really good at it. Then you've got Andoni Iraola, 465 passes per game, and you can imagine that a lot of those passes are forward, go. And then you've got Xabi Alonso with 515 passes per game, which isn't a huge amount more, I guess. But, with that possession stat, I guess what that tells you is the players in his team were better at passing. They had more accurate passing, and they were better at looking for each other in certain positions. So, what this is saying, Marco Silva's the new one to this kind of style video that I've been doing. And what I'm seeing about Marco Silva is he's a bit more reserved in general. He's not like Xavi Hernandez, totally, completely obsessed with possession. But at the same time, he likes to hold the ball when he can. So that's quite interesting, I think. Chance creation, structured and pattern-based for both Marco Silva and Xabi Alonso. They are, in particular, trying to engineer certain types of chances based on the way that they play. Rather than just kind of like allowing the players to read the game and look for situations, it's a lot more like, right, we want to get the ball out wide, find it in these places, make sure this guy's available, and there'll be a lot of stuff on the training ground with them, setting up situations that might happen. Whereas Andoni Iraola is transitional and chaotic. He is basically just putting a lot of the emphasis on his players to use their instincts to look for what's going on in the game and find and create chances not out of thin air, do you know what I mean? But a less controlled and less thought about in general than Alonso and Marco Silva. It's a lot about pressure, it's a lot about intensity and trying to catch the opposing team off guard, whereas Xabi Alonso and Marco Silva kind of prefer to they've got a playbook of chances that they like to create, essentially. Right, the XG profile, absolutely love this one. I always love going through it. It's really, really fascinating. Obviously, XG, expected goals. How many goals are you expected to score and expected to concede per game across the season? Marco Silva was expected to score 1.85 goals in this season and was expected to concede 1.35 against. So his defensive work is actually not bad there, but it does make sense. We'll get on to Andoni Iraola in a minute. And to be honest, between him and Iraola, which is what I'm finding the really interesting facet here, that's actually a pretty good goals for in the grand scheme of things. But when we move on to Andoni Iraola, 1.62 goals for and 1.5 against in terms of expected goals. Andoni Iraola is expected to score a marginal amount more goals, but concede a bit more as well because of the bombastic style of his football. But with Andoni Iraola, it's working for him because Bournemouth are in 6th and Fulham are currently only in 11th. And then we move on to the big guns with Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen team, who managed 2.214 in their XG in that campaign and only 0.83 against. So absolutely schools the other two. He's doing a bit of what they both like to do. He's combining it. He's making it work. He's concerned with control and possession, but he also likes his players to take advantage of situations, kind of like Andoni Iraola does. And instead of kind of like focusing more on one of those two things, he's allowing a blend of it, and it absolutely worked for them. Over 2 goals a game XG is unbelievable, and less than 1, that's absolutely elite numbers. And at the end of the day, they were undefeated that season. So, a lot of this is skewed because look, I've said it already. Spoiler alert, Xabi Alonso seems to be the best option on this list based on the seasons that we're looking at. But we're looking at the season of a champion versus mid-tier Premier League clubs. Obviously, the Bundesliga is different to the Premier League, but it does still give you an indication of his style. And that Xabi Alonso style in particular worked really, really well in that season. And he was really concerned with scoring goals, and he was really concerned with the good defence as well. So Xabi Alonso clears that one easily. So defensive shape, how are the players looking when they are off the ball? A compact mid-block from Marco Silva. So that kind of makes sense because we know that he does a medium press. It's, he doesn't spread his team out, like he keeps the middle of the park quite compact. With Andoni Iraola, it's a aggressive high line, which I just don't think I'm okay with, man. The more I look into Andoni Iraola and the more I talk about him and compare him with other managers, I don't know. I think Andoni Iraola could definitely be a really good manager at a top club. I'm not saying that I don't think he could be, but I just don't think with the team that we've been building, which has largely been to be more possession based over the last few years, without a bit of a massive overhaul, really. I think Andoni Iraola's tactics in football will lead to a very rocky transition from where we are to where we need to get to, and things could start badly with Andoni Iraola. Xabi Alonso, high line compact. So he likes also to play with a high line, but not quite as aggressive as Iraola, and a little bit more reserved, which is good and obviously worked for him because you can see with the 0.72 goals per game conceded, which was the best in the Bundesliga that season, and only 0.83 expected against it. Obviously that compact high line was really working for him. Attacking width. So what do they do with the wide areas of the pitch? Marco Silva, he likes to play wide. wide with his fullbacks getting high, Andoni Iraola wide with his wingers getting high, and Xabi Alonso very wide with his fullbacks getting high. And the reason that Xabi Alonso is very wide is obviously because he played with the three at the back and wing back, so they were covering all of the width. As far as the wide play goes, I'd rather fullbacks than wingers, and that's another thing that I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to Iraola. Like, I've just got PTSD from watching Garnacho get the ball a million times under Maresca and fail to do anything with it. And I've also got PTSD from Pedro Neto getting the ball, making a run, and then not being able to do anything with it, turning around and passing it back, and then it gets recycled and stuff. So, look, I know that you're going to see a bit less of that with Andoni Iraola anyway, but we were playing it safe with our wing play, getting it out wide and trying to create chances from there. And when it wasn't working, we passed it back. But Andoni Iraola wouldn't do that. Andoni Iraola would put all of this emphasis on all of these wingers staying wide, but he would try and he'd put crosses in and, do you know what I mean, like cutbacks and stuff. And where we are at the moment, for me, we just haven't got the players to pull that off. So yeah, let me know what you think about that one. Game control. So for Marco Silva, high and controlled, like he does like to try and control the game. And to be fair, like 51% possession doesn't seem great, but when you think about Fulham's resources, the players they've got, like that is a respectable number, and he does like to try and control the game. Maybe not quite as much as an Alonso or a Xavi, but he is focused with possession and control. Andoni Iraola, game control, medium and transition focused. Like he's not really super concerned with like, let's make sure we've got the ball and make sure we are doing what we want to with the ball. He's much more like, where is the ball? Where can we get it? And then just get it straight up to everyone. Do you know what I mean? So, transition, 100% he is looking to really quickly move the ball on when he gets it. So control, not necessarily his forte. And with Xabi Alonso, obviously it makes sense with the possession stat that you're looking at. Very high, dictates games. Xabi Alonso likes to be in control of a game. He likes to know where things are going to go, and he's obviously got things set up for when they lose the ball, but at the same time, his number one ideology in the grand scheme of things is for his team to control the ball, have the majority of the possession. Watchability, I always find this an interesting one. Marco Silva, balanced and entertaining. So that's about as well as I could sum it up to at the end of the day, because we're not looking at basketball football like we are with Iraola. We're not looking at very, high control, dictating, possession-based stuff like we are with Alonso and Xavi Hernandez. It is kind of somewhere between the two, and he doesn't seem to excel at either of them, but having watched Fulham a couple of times this season, they are a good team to watch, got some good players. Andoni Iraola is chaotic and exciting, and I'm sure that's great when you're winning, but when you're losing with a team like that, and with a style like that, it feels really obvious why, doesn't it? That's the thing, because if you're winning because you're going for it and you're always turning the ball over and you're always trying to get it up there, it's like, yeah, okay, cool, and you're scoring goals like that, it's brilliant. But when you're conceding goals, it seems really obvious then to be like, oh, it's because we play a ridiculously high line and our goalkeeper's not good enough and stuff. So, I don't know, like I say, I'm just not a huge fan of it's not even a huge fan. Like, if we had the team for it, yeah, cool, bring it on, I love it. If we had excellent centre-backs and a really, really good goalkeeper who was able to play with the ball at his feet a little bit more and become part of the auxiliary defence and, confidently without, throwing a paddy and a tantrum every now and again and putting the ball in your back of your net like Robert Sanchez does sometimes, maybe I'd be more keen. But like I say, I just look at our team at the moment and I'm like, I think even, look at like, Levi Caldwell, who's back and playing at the moment, he's not that kind of centre-back. He's definitely more of a controlled possession centre-back. You look at the kind of guys we're linked with, like Van Heck, same kind of thing. So, and with Iraola, it's interesting because he was never involved in the transfers in Bournemouth. I don't expect him to be hugely involved with the transfers at Chelsea. I imagine that's one of the reasons that they might be interested in him. I'm not sure he'd demand that much sporting control. So do we trust our sporting directors to go out and get the players that Andoni Iraola needs in order to play that crazy, chaotic and exciting brand of football? I don't know, just more question marks. And with Xabi Alonso, they are dominant and entertaining, so they're very good at keeping hold of the ball, and they're fun to watch because they do, obviously they play with a high press, and he does allow his players to play with freedom as well. So, look, that's the stat side of it, right? And the stat side of it tell me, kind of back up my initial thought about Marco Silva. A little bit underwhelming, like, If we're looking to be a system team, I don't think Marco Silva's system necessarily, one way or the other, plays into the strengths of our team. So I don't know, I just get the feeling that it wouldn't be bombastic football like it is with Iraola, but he also wouldn't be able to dictate possession and control the game as well as someone like an Alonso or, as I mentioned before, as Xavi Hernandez. So let's have a little look at the general strengths and weaknesses of each manager and see where they stack up. So in terms of control and structure, I think it's fair to say that Marco Silva's got that, right? Because, he obviously he's got a structured build-up style and a reasonable amount of possession for the team that he's with at the moment. Andoni Iraola, nope, it's not about control and structure. It is about let's go. Let's just try and get the ball in the back of the net. With Xabi Alonso, obviously control and structure, and I could have put 2 ticks there really because he definitely outruns the other two in that respect. Premier League experience, right? So look, and I've mentioned this recently, I'm actually not sure how important that is at the end of the day. Like I mentioned it in one of my other videos, Jose Mourinho didn't have any Premier experience when he came in. Won the league, loved that. Ancelotti, no Premier experience, won the league, brilliant. Antonio Conte, no Premier experience, won the league, brilliant. Do you see what I'm getting at? Like Tommy Tuchel came in, no Premier experience, but got the team to win the Champions League. So I don't even necessarily think that Premier experience is that important, but it's such a big conversation that's being had. Marco Silva and Andoni Iraola both have years of Premier League experience now. Marco Silva in particular, he was at Wolves, at Everton, he's been at lots of different teams. He's generally performed pretty well, but I just don't feel like he's ready for that top job despite that level of Premier League experience. Andoni Iraola, I think, he's been linked with Crystal Palace quite a lot at the moment as well. There are talks also about Man United because they're still not sold on Carrick by the sounds of things. Okay, yeah, he's got Premier experience. Xabi Alonso, no Premier experience as a manager, but obviously an absolute legend as a player. And part of me does think that's important. It's not just about managing in the Premier League. It's about understanding the culture, the physicality, some of the intangibles that change between each kind of league that you're in. So although Xabi Alonso doesn't have any actual Premier League management experience, I do think it's interesting that he was such a big player here for Liverpool and he knows kind of what the score is, right? Pressing intensity. Not really a thing for Marco Silva. Mid-block teams, he's not really high pressing. He's happy to let the opposition come towards him with the ball. Andoni Iraola, it's all about that press. And it scares me a little bit because control obviously is not a big part of his game as well. But it's another reason I like Xabi Alonso is the pressing intensity is there because he likes a high press, but at the same time he also favours control. So you probably all agree with me, right? But I'd be interested to see what you think. Defensive organisation. We'll give that to Marco Silva because he likes to tell his players where to be and what to do at every moment. Andoni Iraola, not really. That's where the worry is. It's like the upside with Andoni Iraola is really high, but the downside in terms of the defensive structure, a little bit scary. And again, Xabi Alonso has the defensive organisation. You've only got to look at 0.72 goals conceded per game, which was the best in the Bundesliga that season and obviously was undefeated in that league as well. So clearly over a 36 game, because it's 18 teams in the Bundesliga, over the 36 games, he was able to be very defensively controlled. And then we've got chaos and attacking upside, right? Marco Silva doesn't really have this. And some of that comes down to the structured build-up style that he has. And it's not so much, he's not really into the chaos. He likes to, a little bit like Xabi Alonso, he likes to tell players where to be and have an idea of how they're going to create their chances. Andoni Iraola has this in spades. And like I say, if Andoni Iraola was given the perfect team to play his style of football, they would score a lot of goals. Like, that's just how it's going to be. And Xabi Alonso also has this because with his controlled build-up style, it is less structured than Marco Silva is. He likes people to have an idea of where they're going to go and the kind of chances they're going to create, but at the same time, he allows his players to dynamically react to the game that's going on around him and try and create chances a little bit like Iraola does. That's just not his first kind of port of call. So guys, that's it. That's Marco Silva, Andoni Iraola and Xabi Alonso. Silva and Iraola from this season, both of whom are having good season from a Premier League perspective, looking at the clubs that they're at. Iraola in particular, 6th with Bournemouth right now, it's great. Xabi Alonso smashed it that season. Unbelievable. Like, it's just so good, isn't it? And for me, I don't take the Real Madrid stuff into account so much because if you look at what's going on Real Madrid at the moment, the problems that existed that Xabi Alonso wasn't able to fix are problems that are there in spades and have grown massively. They need someone to come in and really, really change the way that things are going on there. And maybe Xabi Alonso was a little bit too green for the Real Madrid job at the time. But as far as the Chelsea job goes, if they give him the sporting control that he wants, and I think he's proven that when given the right tools and the sporting control and the ability to run the team the way that he wants, obviously he can be very successful. So for me, it's of the three, it's Xabi Alonso. Marco Silva, I'm just not bothered. I think it would be really, really underwhelming if we hired Marco Silva. If he'd come off the back of like a cup win or something, okay, maybe there's a conversation to have there. Just to say that he's built a winning mentality and he's done an amazing job and kind of, done the unexpected by winning something with that Fulham team or getting them consistently into the Europa League, I think would be impressive. It's just not really what we're looking at. So, albeit, yes, he does have the Premier League experience, I'm not sure about him. Andone Iraola, I think the team we'd need a brand new team, basically, at the end of the day. I think, some players we've got would function well. Some players I just think would absolutely not function well at all. We'd probably get the best out of some players we wouldn't expect him to, and some players that we've come to be able to rely on to be good would maybe struggle under quite that chaotic system. And it's like Caicedo, for instance, is potentially one of those. Caicedo came out after Pochettino left, right? And he was like, it was really strange playing under Pochettino because when I was with De Zerbi at Brighton, it was all tactics. And Pochettino was like, run. And Pochettino's style of football was similar to Iraola. It's not exactly the same, but it was similar enough. Do you know what I mean? So I think, some of the really good players that we've got, like Caicedo, for instance, might struggle under Iraola. And I would probably rather focus on someone who can get the best out of the best players that we've got. So guys, tell me what you think in the comments. Marco Silva, I am personally just like, I'm alright. Andone Iraola, I'm a little bit scared of. Xabi Alonso, at the moment of these three, is 100% the one I would go for. For me, in my head, it's between Xabi Alonso and Cesc. They're the only two guys I want. Realistically, Xabi Alonso is the better option there because of the winning experience, but obviously the Chelsea fan in me feels connected to Cesc Fabregas, and I think Fabregas would get more time and he would have a bit of love from the fan base and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So really, really, really interesting. Would love to know what you think. And guys, we've got this far in the video and I haven't said my thing there. So if you have enjoyed this video, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing it. Hit the hype button, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video if you did, and I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.